What is up, YouTube? The Game Messiah, the biblical beast himself, the undiscovered talent, the Archangel of Chaos, UTX Archangel here with my review of Outriders, a brand new looter shooter grind fest from developers of the worst Gears of War game of all time, Gears of War Judgment, and published by Square Enix. Before fully getting into this review, yes, I'm going to compare this game to Destiny, Division, Anthem, and Marvel's Avengers just a little bit. I'm not going to go deep diving on any of these games, just mentioning them so you know what to compare this game to. If you're trying to figure out what is this game like, how can I compare this game to anything, these are the games to compare this game to. It falls in line with this category. And I know the word Marvel's Avengers is confusing people, like how is Marvel's Avengers anything like these games? If you take out the word Marvel and take out the Avengers and you just have like the overall mechanics of that game and how it works, it fits into these looter shooter grind fest games, these MMO light style games for for us to just grind these live service games. So Outriders. Anyone who has watched my streams of this game during the demo and the following streams up to this point of this video, which if you don't already, follow your boy on Twitch. The link to that will be in the description box below. I stream every Monday through Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern to 7 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes I'll stream on Fridays, or depending on how I'm feeling. We do special midnight release streams for games that I'm really excited about. So the next time we do midnight release stream will be Mass Effect's Legendary Edition. Just gonna point that out as well. We might do a stream for MB the show. No guarantees on that. Anyways, those who have been watching my streams, y'all know I've been enjoying the hell out of this game, and I've spoken highly about it from the demo to the last stream that I've done at time of recording. So for those who saw those streams, this video is going to become a surprise to you because I am not going to be nice to this game in this review. I always say this when it comes to me. I'm a very honest and blunt person. I do not sugarcoat anything. I'm not going to freaking kiss ass. If I feel like there's something to talk about in a video game, I'm going to talk about it, regardless of whether or not I enjoy it or don't enjoy it. This game starts off amazing, but the further you get into it, the more and more you realize this is a really good bad game. So to start things off, the character creator is just bland, boring, meh, lackluster. Same as the character creators in Division and Destiny. They're just there to give you the illusion that you can make your own character that's going to be unique to how you create them. Bullshit. It's a shame that in 2021 games have less customization for characters than games at the start of the PS3 and 360 launched. Like it wouldn't be too difficult for these games to have a decent character creator. I'm not asking for Mass Effect 3 or Elder Scrolls Skyrim or Dragon Age Inquisition levels of customization, but you could do something similar to like a Dragon Age 2 or Dragon Age Origins, just those earlier RPGs. But and like half the scale would still be enough to satisfy us who want to put an extensive amount of time into our character creation. After you design your character, you pick your class. This is where the fun begins with Outriders. You have the Devastator, who is a tank-like character built for close quarters combat, heals himself with earth-like abilities as well as shotguns. Then you have the Pyromancer. Name is pretty self-explanatory. You have all the fire abilities in the world. They heal. Those fire abilities heal you as well as mid-range weapons. Then you have this battle. Think battle mage when it comes to Pyromancer. Then you have the Technomancer, who is mostly about healing themselves from long range, throwing out turrets. They're your support. They're your typical support character, support mage style character. Last but not least is my main, the Trickster. Rogue style character that uses SMGs and ARs, has nice mystical abilities like this little temporal blade that just slices things and gives you that same kind of effect that you get in Mars Attack whenever they shoot a human, but blue. The classes of Outriders is where the game shines, as well as the combat in general. The combination of the powers you have in the combat is so nice, smooth, and mostly fluid. Not perfect, but mostly fluid. The game has just outright fun, chaotic combat. It's very rewarding and allows you to feel like a straight up beast, a god amongst men. Within this combat, this game borrows the world tier system that Division had, which, for those who didn't play Division, world tiers is basically every time you increase your world tier, the overall game itself gets harder, but at the same time, the rarer loot becomes more common, and the common loot becomes rarer. So you start to get better and better gear when you're on these higher world tiers. It's risk reward, harder difficulty, better rewards. Unfortunately, this is where some of the bad things start to happen with this game. For one, when you get into the later parts of the game, you start to realize this game doesn't want people playing solo. This is not a solo game. It's a 3-player co-op game, and they mean it when they say it's 3-player co-op. Now it can be different depending on what class you play as. I feel like playing as a trickster solo it's not, don't do it. I think playing as the Technomancer and playing as a Devastator are probably the best classes to use for solo play. I played a trickster on my solo account. I have 4 accounts on PC, and I have 2 accounts on Xbox Series X. So 2 of those are freaking tricksters. But on Xbox, play Tracer. That's what you see on my streams. And on that one, I'm on World Tier 9, getting to World Tier 10. And if you're World Tier 9 or higher, late game in this game is brutal as fuck. So you kind of do want to be able to have, something with more distance where the match becomes useful. You just get ganked a lot in this game, especially when it comes to late game. It's just gank after gank after gank. The game just is letting you know this is not meant to be played solo. You get stun locked up the ass. It gets to a point where it feels overwhelming. What that tells me is that the developers didn't bother scaling the game at all. Some games, like Destiny for example, the game gets harder based on how many people are actually in your fire team. If you're by yourself, the game is easier. If you add one player, it gets harder. Add another player, it gets harder, and so on. This game doesn't have that kind of dynamic scaling. It's just set to assume everyone's in a 3-player stack. So when it comes to like how difficult this game can get for solo, you will think to yourself, difficulty must equal reward. Now, let's talk about the rewards that you get when it comes to this grind fest. You get overwhelmed in this game so much, but the loot sucks. It seems like they don't have, that big of a loot pool, because you really do get some of the same items over and over again. Even a weapon everyone gets for free, basically. Early into the game, your very first legendary weapon, you get a duplicate of that same weapon later in game after fighting a very brutal boss. But yet they give you the exact same gun. It's like, wait a minute, you're not gonna give us something new? This is a legit World Tier 9. This boss was brutal, insane. He was basically almost one type of me when we were fighting, and yet I got the same gun that I've already gotten. That's not good loot. And I watched Angry Joe's Angry Rant, and he was so like he loves to loot in this game. I'm like, maybe he likes the idea of how often you come across loot, but there's just so many duplicates, and there's so many, like, you really don't feel like you're actually getting good loot, especially when it comes to the armor, since all the armor in the game look exactly freaking alike. Even when it comes to the fact that this game doesn't have class-based armor like, say, Destiny does. We have your Hunter armor, your Warlock armor, and your Titan armor. You don't have Pyromancer armor, the Devastator armor, Trickster armor, and Technomancer armor. Everyone wears the exact same shit. It comes off as like such lazy development, but this game is very clear to remind you that it took 5 years to make this game, but you don't feel like it took 5 years. You feel like this game took like maybe 2 years. Maybe it needed more development time, because it's just lacking in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to loot. This is a grind game. This is a game like Destiny, Division, and Anthem, where you're grinding your ass off for loot, essentially. They're looter shooters, but the loot is lacking. You feel like you're not really getting rewarded. And not only that, seemingly 90% of the chest armor in this game has a poncho on it. Yeah, for some magical reason, People Can Fly, developers of this game, has 90% of the chest armor for all the characters, not just one character. All the characters have ponchos. It's become a running joke between my friends when I go, I'll be in party chat like, guys, guess what? I got the best armor of all time. And they'll be like, a poncho? Yeah. It's ridiculous. It ruins any ability for you to enjoy new armor, because you're just like, you don't even get a chance to get a good look at how the armor actually looks, because it's covered with a poncho. It's so bad. The loot in this game is just bad. The only saving grace the loot in this game has is the mod system. How you get mods is by dismantling loot. You get the mod that loot had when you dismantle that piece of gear. Be it guns, armor, doesn't matter. That's good. That is great. As well, you can mod any gear you want in this game how you want. So you can use those mods that you just got out of dismantling things and put it on, build your own classes that way. It's fairly, in depth in a good way. It's one of the best things about Outriders itself. The only downside to this mod system is that you're going to do it with one mod. So let's say you have a chest piece that has 2 mods. You can only modify, you can only switch out one of those mods. You can't switch out both mods. You can only switch out one. That's kind of a downside, but it's still a good feature overall. The other thing when it comes to the mod system is it's kind of disappointing when it comes to the guns. The way the guns mods work is blues have 1 mod, purples have 2 mods. You know how many mods the legendaries have? The purples, not purples, the golds. 2. Shouldn't it be 3? You have 1 for blue, 2 for purples. Shouldn't gold be 3? No, it's 2, just like the freaking purples. So it's like there's no benefit to the legendaries in this game. The golds, they're just there. They don't seem, they look nice, but you're not really going to use them all that often because you're not getting too much of a big difference between them and the purple. Another one of the best things about Outriders is the visuals of the world. Outriders environment, atmosphere, straight up beautiful. You want to explore this game. It has a fake open world, but you want to explore it. When I say fake open world, it gives you the impression that you can explore everything, that it's just massive and open, but it's not. But it's also not linear. It's a weird combination of being a little open but also very closed off. It's weird, but it's not terrible. Like, you won't sit there and complain like, oh my god, this is so shit. You just wish that you could explore the entirety of Enoch instead of just what path the game has laid out in front of you. As for the enemies of Outriders, there's a good variety of enemies and how each human enemies look, but there's also these these animal enemies as well. There's also some alien enemies as well. So there's a good chunk of enemies in this game, but there are a lot of reskin enemies where it's just the same enemy types but just visually look different based on which region of the game you are currently located for your playthrough. The boss fights are terrible, but they also are the boss fights aren't terrible, but they also aren't memorable. Often you'll see people mention the spider boss. There's a reason for that. It's the only boss worth mentioning. Honestly, most of the bosses in this game aren't as dynamic as that fight. Most aren't unique enemies other than that one fight. A lot of the mid to late game bosses are quite disappointing, including one with Moloch, who played the demo. You hear about Moloch so often, you're like, oh, this guy's gonna be such a beast, and you're like a hard fight. He gets like, you fight him, and you're like, all right, well, that was easy, and that sucked. Which takes me to the story. This game's story is all over the place. Most of the dialogue is cringy, poorly written, coming off as if the developers really, thought they were being funny, but they're not. The game kills off characters seemingly as soon as they introduce you to them, and characters you met at the beginning of the game, you basically never talk to again except for the historian lady, and that's just turn-in quest. But Shira, the person who you meet at the beginning of the game, you do missions for during the demo, you never see her again. You never talk to her again. She's just there. Remember how cool it was to see and meet Seth? All the thoughts you got thinking about how you might fight him, even though he's an ally. You kind of feel like you might fight him even though he's an air quotes ally, or team up with him to fight against Moloch because Moloch is some beast of an altered. Well, Seth suffers a fate that leaves a really bad taste in your mouth. The first 2 acts of this game's story leaves you very unsatisfied. This is a game that lives and dies on its combat because the story isn't worth a damn. Which sucks because there are moments that show that there could have been some promise with this game's story. The world around you seems interesting. There's characters like Chana, who's very interesting. There's this alien race, the natives to Enoch, who are very interesting. But that's about it. Outriders is a disappointment. But it's also a really fun game with great combat, fun abilities, mindless chaos, and maybe 3 interesting. Like, the other flaw of this game when it comes to how the story goes is you have no control of your character's personality. You have no control over how your character reacts to people. You have a dialogue options, but you can't actually make decisions for your characters. Your character just does stuff regardless. There's a side quest in this game. If you watch your review, you'll see a clip from that side quest in the review. The review's not up yet. It'll be up sometime this week. But in this side quest, you do all these favors for this old man, and you get to the end point of that mission, and you have the option. Well, you don't really have the option, but instead of telling the man the truth on what happened, your character just lies to him and walks away. And it's like, wow, that's a dickhead thing to do, to just lie to that old man who's suffering right now. How about you give us the option to make that choice? Because I don't want that option. I would have much rather told that guy the truth of what happened with his daughter versus just lie to him and having him just wait and believe in something that's not true. But you don't have the option for that. It happens a lot in the game where there's a lot of dialogue where you wish you had the option to choose what your character would say in that option in that situation and how they handle it versus the game just doing shit, and you're like, oh well, wish I had the option to freaking decide how my character reacts in that.
Did the package reach her in time? Did you get a letter in return?
Old man, the letters you've been getting from your daughter,
Yes. What is it?
your daughter is strong. Your package reached her. You have nothing to worry about.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's unfortunate that it will most be remembered for a terrible launch, because for almost 4 days the game servers barely worked and the game was filled with disconnects and lag. It sucks because, again, like, you've played this game, it feels so good to play. It keeps you wanting to play. It's a very addictive game, which is what a lot of these grind fest looter shooters do. They get you stuck on playing them. They get you addicted to playing them. They have really good combat. Outriders itself is literally just a really good bad game. My score for Outriders is a 4 out of 10. Originally this game was going to be a 7, but the server issues, the lack of scaling, the bad story, the poor loot, unrewarding boss fights, lack of unique drops, all of that just drops this game's score by 3 points. Like, that's a big 3 points. Originally would have been a 7, but all the things I just mentioned to you, all the negatives that I mentioned during this video, dropped it to a 4. And that hurts me to say that, because this game is fun when it works. And I don't remember when the last time I scored a game that low. Usually my reviews don't get lower than a 5. If even that, I think some of them get lower than a 6. So maybe the future will be better for this game. You know, the beginning sucked, but maybe the future will be better, because there's so much here to enjoy. At its best, it is that 7. But at its normal, it is a 4. That's my review for Outriders, guys. Hope you all enjoyed. I'll hit you guys with another review when a game that interests me pops up. But until then, thank you all for watching. Be safe to one another. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Goodbye, good night,